Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another webinar in the Tapping In series. So today we're going through part 4 out of 6. We're going to discuss how you can actually tap in to the market of people with impairment. So in previous webinars, we've looked at so far in this series why to employ people with impairment, how to actually go about it, what disability employment services are about, and how you can make use of them. We've also looked at how big a market we're looking at when it comes to people with impairment and how much money it's worth and how it's actually quite rapidly growing. So today we're actually going to cover the practicalities of how it is you make your business more attractive and more likely to actually bring this particular market into you. So let's get in. 30-Foot Drop would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise the continuing connection to land, waters and community. We pay our respects to them and their cultures, to elders both past and present. We must always remember that under the tarmac, concrete, oil stains that we've put on this country, underneath it, that land was and always will be traditional Aboriginal land. We'd also like to acknowledge the Department of Communities Disability Services for funding this and many other initiatives like it. Without their support, so many projects such as Two Wise Monkeys would never actually see the light of day, and as a community we would be much poorer for it. So this workshop is part of the realities and advantages of access and inclusion grants awarded to 30-Foot Drop as part of the Information Linkages and Capacity Building Grants of 2018 to 2019. So we'll do a little bit of housekeeping before we dive right into the information. And today is actually quite a long one, so I will be going through a bit faster than normal. Okay, but unfortunately we don't have the resources to actually monitor all of our live streams during this broadcast. So if you want to ask any questions or interact with us live, please head to www.30footdrop.com.au/live. The link is also there underneath my talking head. Okay, there you'll be able to find a chat box that you can actually interact with us live. That will be the only one that we'll be monitoring throughout this stream. Okay, so please head there. It'll make it a lot more fun for all of us. Now, as I said, we'll be covering a lot of information in a short period of time, so we recommend that viewers please take the actions to minimize distractions. Obviously, life is life. You're not going to be able to minimize everything, but there are a few things that you can do to actually make it so that you can absorb all of this amazing information that we have for you today. We'll also be recording this session and posting it on our Vimeo library and our YouTube channel. So if you want to review anything that we go over today or go back to seek clarification, please head to those two places. They will be there and they'll be left on there for as long as those two platforms exist. Also, if you really enjoyed today, please tag us into a social media post. Head to any of our social media platforms, give us a review, give us a recommendation. These things all really help to build our brand and to actually get the awareness out there to other businesses that this place exists and that this information is there. And if you know of anybody who could really benefit from what we're doing today, tag them in. Okay. This is a free resource that will make so much difference to so many businesses out there. Also, any of the facts, figures, and research that we actually referenced today, all of those things will be available on the 30-Foot Drop digital resource library. Okay, once again, found at www.30footdrop.com.au. Okay. In that resource library, we not only have the stuff that we reference in our webinars like this, we have a lot of other information around disability access and inclusion, from your checklists to standards to interpretations to policies that you may want to look at including in your own businesses. And if you're going through there and you know of a resource that I don't have there, please let me know. I'm always interested in any resources that people have got out there. And at the end of the webinar today, we've got a really short survey for attendees to complete. please take the time to fill this out. It helps us immensely to make sure that we're on the right track and we're improving. So you'll find that on the 30foot drop 30footdrop.com.au/live page. Okay, and down the bottom there, you'll see some survey buttons, and this is webinar number 4. So if you could go into that at the end of the webinar today and fill it out, that would be really helpful. Thank you. So that's the housekeeping over. Please allow me to introduce you to the concept of the wise monkeys. Okay, your wise monkeys are actually your presenters. So I am See No Evil. I'm Ben. I am the managing director of 30foot Drop. I am a C5 quadriplegic, hence why my hands are like dog paws, and that occurred as a result of an accident 13 years ago. Now, how 30foot Drop came about, and we're all about open, honest conversations within the community, educating people about disability and the realities and advantages that apply to business. And how it all came about was I started to get very frustrated around the ignorance in society about disability and impairment. When suddenly it hit me that before I had my accident, I actually knew nothing about this part of the community at all. And how, why is that? It's because nobody's actually out there teaching it. So how could I get angry at society for not knowing something that they haven't ever been taught? And that's why I started 30foot Drop, and that is our mission, educating the community. So I am See No Evil, okay, and that is because by the end of our sessions, with the information that you get, and by listening to my story and by seeing who I am, that you will see no evil about disability and impairment. Hear No Evil is my co-presenter Lisa, and she will be running some of these webinars herself as well. Now, she is See No Evil. This is because she has what we like to term an invisible disability or an invisible impairment. Okay, now I won't spoil her story because it's an amazing story, and if you want to hear more about it, you'll have to track down one of the webinars that she is presenting. But because it is an invisible disability or impairment, you can't actually tell, okay, unless she actually lets you know, unless she tells you, unless you hear her story. And hopefully after hearing her story, you will hear no evil about disability and impairment. But wait, isn't there normally 3 wise monkeys? See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil? Well, there is. That's because you guys, the audience, speak no evil. By the end of the day, hopefully you will see that as a community, okay, people with disability and impairment, we are active members of the community. We deserve to be thought of as potential customers because we have money to spend. So hopefully you will leave this webinar speaking no evil about disability and impairment. So, how are we going to get you started on the path of the wise monkey? Okay, there is a lot to learn about people with impairment and how they can increase your business by attracting them. Okay, so how we'll do that is, first of all, we'll be looking at the 3 main areas, or looking at 3 areas of need that most businesses can actually improve on in order to tap into this market. Okay, these areas are accessibility, universal design, and diverse marketing. Okay, after we've actually covered all of this, we're going to finish up with a bit of an open forum, okay, where you guys can ask any questions and none are off limits. Now, you may notice that there is very little written content on my slides. Okay, that's because you're actually here to interact with me, your presenter. Okay, and in order to facilitate this, I once again really encourage you to head over to www.30footdrop.com.au/live so you can take part in the chats. Okay, and you can ask any questions. Okay, they don't have to be specifically about what we're on today. If you have any questions or queries about the wider field of disability access inclusion, or ask me more personal questions, that's fine too. I am open and honest, and that is what 30foot Drop is all about. Now, before we get into looking at the ways that you can actually tap into this market, I just want to review some terminology quickly so that we can all make sure that you understand what we're using, because unfortunately some words get used in the wrong context, or some people don't completely understand what the word is actually defining. So first of all, I want to have a look at the difference between a disability and an impairment. An impairment, okay, is an injury, illness, or congenital condition that causes or is likely to cause a loss or difference of physiological or psychological function. In short, your impairment is your medical diagnosis. Okay? So my impairment is that I'm a C5 quadriplegic with post-traumatic stress in remission. Okay? That is my impairment. That is how my body differs, or how I differ as a person to what is seen as the normal functions in the community. A disability, on the other hand, is the loss or limitation of opportunities to take part in a society on an equal level with others due to social and environmental barriers. Okay? A disability is, as the word implies, something that makes you unable or disables you from being able to access or participate in something. For example, stairs disable me from being able to access a business. They make me not able to actually go and spend my money. So hopefully that one has made sense to everybody. The next one that I would like to look at is the difference between access and inclusion. Access, well actually, first of all I'll say access and inclusion. A lot of people think of it as one whole term, access and inclusion, but it's not. It's actually access and inclusion are two completely different things. So first of all, access. It refers to the removal or reduction of barriers, both physical and attitudinal, to participation in the activities and functions of a community. At its core, access focuses a lot on the physical world around us, okay, and is very easily assessed by a checklist or standards, okay. This results in businesses and organisations mainly focusing on access because it is the easiest thing to measure out there. And it is an easy win. And it's great. We need access. We need to be able to get into things. Okay? But the next step to it is inclusion. Inclusion is more a psychological state of being and is the process whereby every person, irrespective of age, disability, gender, religion, sexual preference, or nationality, who wishes to, can participate fully in all aspects of an activity or service in the same way as any member of the community. Inclusion is about knowing that your opinion is going to be worthy, is about knowing that you are seen as an equal. Okay? Inclusion is a psychological state of being. It's about being made welcome. So hopefully those have made sense to everybody. And if you've got any questions, once again, I really encourage you guys to hit me up in the chat boxes on 30footdrop.com.au/live. Okay, and I will answer any as I go. But for now, let's get into the good stuff. So as mentioned in the overview, okay, there are three main strategies that businesses can use to tap into the market of people with impairment. These are accessibility, universal design, and marketing. Now, these three methods, they can all be used individually, but you will get your best results if you try to use all three concurrently. Okay? It is the most cost-effective and energy-effective way of actually tapping into this market. So let's start off with accessibility. Now, when someone talks about accessibility, most people think about items such as wheelchair ramps, ACROD spots, okay, doors that like self-opening doors and doors at shops and bathrooms as well, accessible bathrooms, which is great. That is all part of access, but that's only one very small part of access. Okay, that's the physical access of a place. Okay, and there is so much more to do with it. So I'm going to run you through 6 more facets of accessibility. So the first one, okay, is information accessibility. Okay, basically you need to make sure that your business's information is accessible to everybody. And it's important not to make assumptions on how people can actually receive or communicate information. Okay? The best approach is to make your information available in a variety of formats, because not everybody will be able to read a small print pamphlet. Not everybody will be able to access a Facebook page. Okay? The more ways and the more techniques that you use to make your information accessible, the more likely it is your customer will be able to see it and be able to absorb that information. So, options for actually different ways of communicating this information include orally by staff, so making sure that your staff can verbally communicate your business's goods and services effectively and efficiently. Okay, and this could be over the phone, including in the case of people who are deaf or have a hearing impairment, through the use of the telephone typewriter national relay service. Okay, this service is for, as it says, people who have a major hearing impairment, and enables them to actually have a conversation over the phone. And what happens is they have a special device that they use to communicate with somebody at a relay station. And that person will ring you and they will relay messages backwards and forwards to you. There's a slight delay, but it's a very good system and a very useful system. And knowing how to communicate through that makes things run a lot smoothly. The information can also be available in a hard copy written material, including a large, say about size 18 font size print option. Having the information available in electronic formats, including by email, via websites, online chat services. Having it available on a computer disk, or as an audio recording as well is another option. Businesses could also consider installing an audio loop in their public shop fronts or offices to assist people with hearing aids. Okay. Also, having contacts and finding out ways within your local area of how you could actually easily provide an Auslan interpreter if required, or a Braille option upon request. Okay, these are 2 items that are not needed as often, or 2 options that are not needed as often, but make a major difference to someone if you can actually procure it fast, and you've got much better chance of actually securing their business if you can get those options fast. The next one is looking at maintaining an accessible premises, okay? Now, an accessibly designed premises is absolutely great, okay? And standards are getting better. Builders are actually understanding and sticking to those standards better, slowly. And these are absolutely great. But if it isn't maintained properly, it can be disastrous. And in some cases, downright dangerous for people with impairment. Okay, so here are some issues that you should be aware of. Okay, first one, don't lock accessible bathrooms or lifts whilst the actual premises is in use by members of the public. Okay, and ensure that accessible bathrooms can actually be reached via a continuous accessible path of travel. Okay, basically not blocking the places off. Okay, not restricting the access to them, because some impairments, mine included as well, you sometimes have a very limited warning period about when you actually need to use the restroom. So if it's blocked or locked and it takes extra time, it can lead to some very, very embarrassing situations. Okay, so don't block them or lock them off. Another big one is not using the accessible bathrooms or change rooms as storage areas. Okay, accessible bathrooms are big, yes. Okay, but that is by proper design. Okay, when you are using a mobility device, you need more room to be able to get around properly. Some have got very, very bad turning circles. Some people require being able to get right up next to the toilet in order to transfer. Okay, other people actually face it face on. Those bathrooms are actually designed to be that size in order to accommodate the majority of impairments. By using them as a storeroom, by putting your cleaning supplies in there, you're actually reducing it down and it's no longer big enough. Okay, not only are you going to restrict access to your customers, which is going to drive them away, but you also got a very good chance that that equipment that is stored in there is going to get damaged. Because when you got to go, you got to go. Next issue that you should be aware of is looking at your temporary displays, okay, or stacking goods. Making sure that you don't do it in a manner that obstructs the aisles, okay? Making sure that there is going to be enough room. And if you stop and think about it, what shops or businesses do you actually prefer to go into? Do you prefer to use a business that is very cramped, as a result has bad lighting and you're always trying to dodge around people and you're getting stuck? Or do you prefer to use the open, airy, sort of well-lit ones? Okay? Making a bit more room for your aisles, having slightly less stock out there, is actually going to attract more customers in the long run. Okay, it seems a bit counterintuitive. If you've got more things to sell there, surely you're going to make more money. But if people can't actually get around and see them, there's no point in having them. Next issue, make sure that counter heights, lift buttons, FPOS facilities, door handles, and stuff like that, all in reach of a person using a wheelchair or somebody of short stature. Okay? Having a FPOS machine that's up high makes it really, really hard and uncomfortable for somebody like myself to use. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. Ensure that lift buttons have got raised tactile and braille information next to them, and that the lifts actually provide and continue to provide audible information telling passengers what floor they have arrived at. Okay, this is really, really important for people with sight impairments. Okay, and also at the end of the day, the audible information is really great for cell phone zombies. Okay, when you're there doing it, I mean, I will admit I'm guilty of it myself. Okay, it arrives at the floor, I'm like, oh crap, that's right, this is my floor. Okay, so really good one for that. Maintaining adequate lighting levels throughout the premises. Okay, that's also a safety issue. Not allowing surfaces to become dangerously worn or slippery. Once again, it's not just an impairment specific issue, that one, but if you've got somebody who is frail or has reduced mobility, it can make it very dangerous. Providing adequate signage for people with impairment accessing or using the premises, and having the signage at a level that most people can see. Okay, instead of it being up really high where it's not natural to look all the way up there when you're looking for signage, instead of having it lower makes a lot more sense. So all in all, accessibly designed premises are great. You just need to make sure as a business that you continue to maintain them. Okay, if you do that, then you will continue to attract this market. Transport is the next one. If your business provides transport options, then please be aware of the following. Okay, ensure information relevant to passengers with impairment is provided on the transport services website. Okay, such information may include specific booking practices and processes, requirements for passengers with impairment, locations of accessible bus and train stops or something similar, timing of accessible services, and access features. Okay, a great place to actually look at as an example of this is the AirAsia booking portal. Okay, the information that they have there on their actual booking portal around booking if you're somebody with impairment is amazing. They've done a really great job of it, and I really encourage you guys to have a look at that one as an example. The next point to look at is to make sure that booking forms and mobile apps are accessible to people with impairment. Okay, we'll cover this a little bit more in a second when we have a look at web content accessibility. Make sure that you provide training to frontline staff on the delivery of accessible transport to passengers with impairment. Okay, make sure that if you offer a transport option that has to do with using a hoist, for example, to be able to get somebody from a wheelchair to their seat. Make sure that your staff are actually properly trained in using that. Okay, if they're not trained in using it, it can be dangerous not only for the person with the impairment, but also for your staff. So making sure that they're properly trained on how to do that. Another example would be if you have a service that involves being able to tie a chair down into a vehicle. Making sure that your staff are well versed in how to actually use those means that you're a lot less likely to put somebody in danger. And the last point is to just make sure that you take steps to inform any booking agents that you have, for example, travel agents, okay, to make sure that they know of the relevant considerations for passengers with impairment. Okay, so for example, if you require the passengers to demonstrate fitness to travel, or impairment equipment carriage restrictions or access features, okay, if you require those things, make sure that your booking agents are also aware of these requirements to make sure that everybody's on the same page and there isn't any misinformation happening. Okay, so in summary, if you'll provide business transport options, then you're going to need to make sure that you have a look at your practices to make sure that they're safe and that people with impairment are going to be able to make the most out of them. And like I said, check out the AirAsia site. It's an absolutely great example of it. Mobility devices, okay? Look, under the Disability Discrimination Act, it may be against the law for the owner or manager of a shop, restaurant or club or other venue to refuse entry to someone who uses a scooter or wheelchair if it is being used as an impairment aid. Basically, if a person needs that item in order to get around your shop, okay, it may be against the law for you to restrict the access of the person only to certain parts of the shop, okay? An example of this are small shops who restrict mobility within the area, don't make their aisles big enough or have badly laid out plans, okay, due to large amounts of stock. So you need to make sure that somebody with a mobility item or a pram is able to get around your shop if you want to attract this market, if you want to be able to make more money. Okay, you need to make sure this is happening. And as I said, it may be illegal for you to restrict them. So, for example, if you're a kitchen shop who's got stuff stacked everywhere, and somebody in a mobility device who needs a mobility device wants to come in, you can't actually stop them from going down those aisles. And I'm sorry, but if they break something, there's a good chance that they're not going to be liable for it. And assistance animals, okay? So I put this under mobility aids because they provide an amazing mobility aid in assistance animals. So you need to be aware that a guide dog is only one form of assistance animal, and that there are other assistance animals, such as those that assist with hearing impairments and other medical conditions. Okay, you can get animals that assist people with type 1 diabetes to monitor their sugar levels. You can get people with anxiety or post-traumatic stress disorder. Okay. Now, if you're unsure if an animal is an assistance animal, the law says that it's okay to ask the person with an impairment to provide some evidence that an animal is an assistance animal and has been trained to meet the standards required for an animal in a public space. Okay? An accredited assistance animal will have some form of identification to show that they have been trained to meet those standards. Okay? If that person does have that evidence, then legally that person is allowed anywhere that your customers are allowed within your premises. You are not allowed to refuse entry. Okay? Restaurants, cinemas, anywhere similar. Okay? Anywhere. Then you need to make sure that you provide frontline staff with the information or training about assistance animals and mobility devices as said earlier. Okay, so in summary, If a mobility device or assistance animal is needed in order for a customer to navigate your store, it may be illegal to refuse them entry. Okay, so make sure that you give that thought when laying out your store. Online content. Okay, the accessibility of online content is paramount to any business because the internet is by far the favoured way for consumers to get information about goods and services of a business. This research is often done prior to the consumer actually physically visiting a storefront, and by making your information accessible, you will encourage more customers to engage. Okay, makes sense. The following are guidelines to keep in mind when designing your online content in order to make it accessible for people with impairment. Okay, so a lot of impairments, people with impairment, when it comes to especially visual impairments and other sensory impairments, use an app or an aid called a screen reader. Now, material that's presented in only an image-based format, such as GIFs, TIFFs, PNGs, JPEGs, etc., will not be accessible to a screen reader because the screen reader cannot actually interpret them. Okay? So if you have information presented in that sort of style, you need to make sure that it is available in a different format. And I'll go through some different formats in a sec. Okay? Your next tip is to make sure that you use plain fonts on your websites, okay, that are easy to read. Avoid fonts that are decorative or stylized. And make sure there's plenty of contrast between the foreground text and the background colors. Okay? Don't provide content only in PDF format, as screen readers, once again, generally cannot read them. If you do have PDFs, provide the same information in a Word and or HTML format as well. Okay? So if you have a PDF download, have a Word version as well. There is a way that you can lock Word documents so they cannot be modified if that is what you're worried about. Make sure that you include text descriptions of any non-text content. Okay? This goes back to what I was saying before around images, having information in images, and it can also apply to graphs. Okay? What you can do is use the alt text function. Most website builders have this, and it's very easy to use. And all you do is you put a verbal or a written description of what the picture contains, and it will put the text behind the picture on the website. So as the screen reader comes down, it will read that text whilst highlighting the picture. Really, really easy way to make sure that it can be done. Avoid any scanned pictures of text, for example, a photo of a menu and text boxes, as screen readers, once again, cannot read these. Okay? Use an alt text function again if you want, or actually have it on the website properly. Provide captions and or transcripts for multimedia, for example, audio and video content. Okay? YouTube, for example, has a function that will actually auto-generate closed captions. Now, they're not perfect. You may need to go through and slightly edit them, but it will make this content available for all your customers to be able to use. Don't set audio or video content to play automatically when a page is loaded, as this can interfere with the use of screen readers. And to be honest, it is annoying as all hell. Okay? If you're anything like me, you've got 30 tabs open on your browser at once, and you can never quite figure out where that noise is coming from. If you use a CAPTCHA to make sure that there are, to prevent malicious interference with your website, make sure that there is actually an alternative available, whether that be email, reply, or something similar, okay? Because these are not accessible at all. Make sure that your content on your website is navigatable by keys on a keyboard, i.e. does not require use of a mouse. Make technical support available for consumers who need assistance on your website via an online chat session, phone or email. And lastly, test the accessibility of your website. Okay? You can either speak to an accessibility professional, or if you know any customers of yours that actually have an impairment, ask them to test it and give you feedback. Okay? So all in all, there are quite a few things that you can do to increase the accessibility of your web content. Now, it may sound like a lot, but it's all fairly easy. Okay? If you want further guides on that as well, you can actually have a look at www.w3c. W3c.org. Okay? And that is the Web Content Accessibility Association, and they have got some amazing guides up there. I also have them on the Digital Resource Library. Okay, final one to look at is planning events. Now, we'll be covering accessible tourism and events and looking at their opportunities in greater detail in part 5 and 6 of the webinar series. So this is looking specifically at the physical event. So when planning events, including meetings, festivals, conferences, lectures and fundraisers, you need to take all reasonable steps to ensure that the event is accessible so that people with impairment can attend and participate. Okay? Consideration should be given to the issues raised in each of the earlier sections of the in this webinar. Okay, so looking at your web content accessibility, looking at your accessible premises being maintained, transport, you need to keep all of those in mind. Okay, but the additional items should be considered as well. Okay, so first up, explain the accessibility of the venue on the invitation or registration form, and request that attendees inform you of any accessibility requirements they have so that you can accommodate them. Okay, examples of what to include the access process or maps for people with impairment, explain accessibility and maps for people using wheelchairs, and also explaining whether all handout materials will be available in accessible electronic format on request. Okay, these are all great examples of what you can do. Additionally, the following considerations should also be planned for in venue. Okay, making sure that there is sufficient, clear, simple and visible signage to direct people where to go. Okay, so whether that's to the toilets, the accessible seating area, the accessible gate as well. You should make sure there's enough signage for that. Ensure the venue is large enough and set out in such a way that people with impairment, including people using mobility devices such as wheelchairs or scooters, can actually move freely around the venue, even when the venue is full. Okay? This is such a big thing when you're looking at the big corporate dinners. Okay? Make sure there's enough room for people like me to mingle. Okay? It makes it so much better and so much nicer and much more likely to come back. When setting up seating arrangements and allocations, allow people with impairment a choice of seating, including options with a clear view of the stage and speakers platform. This is particularly important for people who are deaf or have a hearing impairment or a variety of other impairments. Ensure that any speakers that you have actually there are aware that if they're using PowerPoint slides or videos in their presentation, they need to provide the same information in a format which is accessible for people who have a vision or hearing impairment. Okay, for example, they can provide an oral description of PowerPoint slides. They can provide a hard copy or electronic and or audio copies of material ahead of the event, or use captioning or Auslan interpreters during the presentation. Personally, I love Auslan interpreters because they just add to the atmosphere of it. They are amazing to watch, but that's another story. Make sure that you brief your venue and registration staff about their responsibility to avoid discriminating against people with impairment. Okay? And about any access issues, such as allowing people using assistance animals into the venue. Okay, the location of accessible toilets and the availability of handouts in accessible formats. Okay, this information could actually be provided to your staff as part of the event pre-briefing session. Okay, you could also brief venue and you could also give a specified staff member responsibility for addressing any accessibility issues that arise on the day of the event, and make sure that all staff of the event are aware of who it is. Okay, if you've got one staff member, and this goes for any business actually, give one staff member responsibility around access and inclusion and answering any queries and questions from the public. Okay, this person will then be the go-to person. People will be able to get answers a lot faster, and to be honest, as somebody with impairment, it always impresses me when a business actually has an access and inclusion expert within their ranks. So that is some accessibility tips on how you can actually improve your business to tap into this market. Now we're going to move on to universal design. Okay. So first up, what is universal design? So all of the tips that we had before to increase accessibility of your business are great. But what is even better than a solution? That is, what is better is if the problem didn't exist in the first place. Okay? Universal design is a great way to make your organization amazingly accessible and is cheaper, faster, and visually more appealing than fixing it afterwards. Okay? So, universal design is the design and composition of an environment so that everybody can, to the greatest extent possible, regardless of age, size, and ability, that they can access the environment, they can understand the environment, they can inclusively use the environment, and it is when, and in short, okay, it is when society designs with everybody in mind. Okay? And staff at all levels can contribute to universal design. Okay? From small changes on a single product or service to designing holistic experiences for customers. Universal design is something that every level of a business can take part in. So let's look at the business case for universal design. Okay? Universal design is much more than just catering for customers with a disability or impairment. Okay? And it can have the following business benefits. Okay? It can have increased market reach. Okay? A universally designed product will be usable, accessible, and appealing to a wider customer base of people. Okay? More like, being able to have a product that appeals to more people means more customers. It can have an enhanced customer satisfaction and retention. Okay? A satisfied customer is your best champion, is your best advertising, because they will tell other people about the product or service or environment, increasing awareness and potentially creating new custom. Universal design can also have a market crossover success. Products that are aimed at a specific target group can sometimes generate interest and demand from unforeseen markets. A great example of this are the OXO Good Grips range. Okay? It is a well-cited case study of how a specialised product design, in this case, they're actually kitchen tools that are designed for older people with arthritis in mind. They've got bigger handles and better grips on them so that you can easily get a hold of them. Okay? It actually generated widespread demand. It become quite popular in multiple markets. Okay? Not only for people with disability, but a lot of people in the mainstream of society use them as well. So that's how it's been great for their business. Universal design can also actually create a positive public image. Okay? A business that positively contributes to society by incorporating a universal design approach is likely to receive a reputation for having a high level of corporate social responsibility. Universal design can also meet increased customer expectations. In recent decades, the voice of the general public has become more prominent and influential in business. Universal design enables companies to design products and services and environments that more closely match consumer expectation and needs. And the last point of business case for universal design is that it's acceptance at first use. A consumer forms an opinion about a product at first use or even first sight. A recent study actually suggests that internet users take less than 50 milliseconds, okay? That's 1/20th of a second to judge the visual appeal of a website that they have visited. If a first impression is negative, a consumer is not likely to pay for a product from there. If a product is clear, simple, easy to access, easy to use, a consumer will be more likely to proceed with the transaction. And you'll be able to meet those criteria through universal design. So how do we achieve universal design? Okay? The most efficient way to achieve universal design is collaborating with and employing people with impairment. They can guide the process with their experience. Okay? There are also 7 principles, topics to note when striving for universal design. Okay? These are equitable use, flexibility in use, simple and intuitive use, perceptible information, tolerance for error, low physical effort, and size and space for approach and use. Let's look at each of these in slightly more detail so that you can understand what they are. So first up is equitable use. Okay? The design should be useful and marketable to people with diverse abilities. Some of the guidelines for this, okay? It should provide the same means of use for all users, identical where possible, equivalent when not. An example of the difference between identical and equivalent is having ramps instead of stairs everywhere is identical because everybody's using the ramp. Okay? A ramp as stairs, as shown in the picture on the slide there, is an example of equivalent. Okay? It should avoid segregating or stigmatizing any users. Okay? For example, an example of stigmatizing users I've found is when they have had equivalent access by having into a restaurant where I can access through the kitchen. But by having wheelchair access through the kitchen only, through a back entrance, stigmatizes or segregates me. So where possible, universal design aspects should avoid doing that. There should be provisions for privacy, security and safety, and it should be equally available to all users. And all in all, it should make the design appealing to all users, equitable use. The next is flexibility in use. Okay? The design should accommodate a wide range of individual preferences and abilities. A great example of that is the use of flashing lights with sirens or beeping sounds in warning or emergency situation. Okay? That way, people with a reduced hearing and sight can know what is happening. If it is an audible only alarm, people with reduced vision will not see. If it is a visual only alarm, people with reduced hearing will not hear it. By having both, okay, it actually allows for the flexibility and use of a wide range of individual preferences or abilities. So some guidelines for this. In order to achieve this, you should try and provide choice in methods of use. You should look at accommodating right-handed or left-handed access and use. You should facilitate the user's accuracy and precision. Okay, so allowing for a bit more or a bit less accuracy and precision. And it should also, the product should also provide adaptability in the user's pace. Number 3, looking at simple and intuitive use. Okay, this means that the use of the design is easy to understand regardless of the user's experience, knowledge, language skills, or current concentration level. Some guidelines to achieve this. Okay, you should look at eliminating unnecessary complexity. It should be consistent with the user's expectations and intuition. It should accommodate a wide range of literacy and language skills, and should arrange information consistent with its importance. And lastly, it should provide effective prompting and feedback during and after task completion. A great example of doing this is the male-female toilet signs. Okay, that sort of sign there, it is simple and intuitive to use. Okay, it is eliminated unnecessary complexity. It accommodates for a wide range of literacy and language skills. It is a great example of simple and intuitive use. Next one to look at is perceptible information. This design the design should communicate information effectively to the user regardless of ambient conditions or the user's sensory abilities. For example, okay, raised tactile indicators, pictured on the left there, not only warn people with a vision impairment, but alerts everybody, okay, to an upcoming hazard. They are used when there is a hazard coming up. And you'll see, if you start to pay attention to them, you'll see them at most road crossings. Okay. Some of the guidelines to achieve perceptible information include the use of different modes, so both pictorial, verbal, tactile, for redundant presentation of essential information. So the tactile indicators shown there, not only are they tactile, but also they contrast well. So therefore, you have a different mode of actually showing the information. Make sure you should maximise the legibility of essential information. So making sure that it follows the other guidelines within here. It should differentiate the elements in a way that can actually be described, i.e. it makes it easier to give instructions or directions. And it should provide compatibility with a variety of techniques or devices used by people with sensory limitations. Number 5, tolerance for error. Okay, the design minimises hazards and the adverse consequences of accidental, unintentional actions. A great example of this are guards and handrails on ramps. Okay, these actually provide a tolerance of error for error when using the ramp. Okay, if somebody isn't steering quite straight, okay, or if somebody starts to slip, okay, it provides a tolerance of error because you can grab a hold of the guide rails. The foot guards down the bottom that you can see on the picture there, where it's a slightly raised area, that provides a stopper for wheelchairs, trolleys, prams, okay, if somebody doesn't use the ramp quite right. Therefore, they're not going to go flying off the edge. Okay, some guidelines for this. Elements should be arranged to minimise hazards and errors. Okay, so the most used elements, the most accessible, the hazard areas elements should be eliminated, isolated, or shielded. Provide warnings of hazards and errors. You should provide safe features, for example, the kickboards there or the bumps on the side of the ramps. And you should discourage unconscious access in tasks that require vigilance. Okay, so making sure that people can't just operate on robot mode, where they're more likely to actually end up hurting themselves. Low physical effort. The design, this is all about making sure that the design can be efficiently and comfortably used with a minimum of fatigue. Okay. A great example is installing lever door handles. Means that it can be opened using the elbow or closed fist, benefiting people carrying shopping bags as well as people with limited strength in their hands, or the inability to be able to grip around door handle in my case. Okay, it provides a minimum of physical effort in order to use. Okay, so guidelines to achieve this is to do things like allow the user to maintain a neutral body position, make sure that it only uses a reasonable operating forces. It should minimise repetitive actions, and it should minimise sustained physical effort. The final point for universal design is the size and space for approach and use. Okay, appropriate size and spaces should be provided for approach, reach, manipulation, and use, regardless of user's body size, posture, or mobility. Some of the guidelines for this is providing, an example of this, okay, is accessible parking spaces. They're actually designed now by the new Australian standards to have a shared area between the parking spaces and placed closer to building entrance to allow people with mobility issues and mobility devices easier access. Okay, there are size and space that allows a variety of different adaptations to be used. Okay, so guidelines to actually achieve this include providing a clear line of sight to important elements for any seated or standard user. Make reach to all components comfortable for any seating or standard user. Accommodate variations in hand size and grip. And providing adequate space for the use of assisted devices or personal assistants. So that's universal design. Let's have a quick look at diverse marketing. First up, let me explain what diverse marketing is. Okay. 50 years ago, a company could be successful in marketing only to WASPs, okay, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, since they represented most of the consumer market. Eventually, some companies realised the business potential of marketing to other populations as well, and several efforts at multicultural marketing were actually attempted. But a company could still experience success without it. Today, however, the market is decidedly different. The Australian population has grown increasingly diverse, and if trends continue, today's minority groups will make up the majority of the population sometime around 2040. Okay? Interesting thought. Thus, a general market strategy may already no longer be effective in some contexts, requiring organisations to diversify their marketing strategies. Okay? That's why this form of marketing is essential. So, customers in different cultures have different values, experiences, expectations, and ways of interacting. Even within a culture, some differences will be apparent between different subgroups, not just ethnicity, but also age, gender, profession, religion, family size, physical environment, and much, much more. Okay? Diversity marketing, or diverse market, involves acknowledging that marketing and advertising must offer alternative ways of communicating to these diverse groups. With that knowledge, diverse marketers aim to develop a mix of different communication methods in order to reach people in each of the diverse groups present in the market. Okay? So diverse marketing is essential in this day and age. Marketing is the process of how business's product or service promotes its key features and benefit to its customers, which ultimately generates sales for the business by satisfying the customer's needs. It is essential. It is also powerful. Okay? On average, we are exposed to around 5,000 ads per day, ranging from TV and print all the way down to branding and sponsorship. Okay? Advertising is everywhere. Okay? Hell, we've got advertising here, we've got some of the webinar there's some of the web page that you're looking at. It is everywhere around. Okay? And it continues to be a powerful medium for persuasion and changing attitudes. Diverse marketing also provides connection. By representing people with impairment in their advertising, companies can connect more strongly with customers with impairment, as well as their families and friends. Okay? It also demonstrates support for human diversity in a broader sense. Okay? So, there are three main diverse marketing ideas. Okay? There are three main ways to diversify your marketing methods, and these include inclusive, thematic, and pride. We're going to have a quick look at all three. Okay? So inclusive marketing. This method does not emphasize disability, rather it naturalizes it by incorporating people with impairment in images and messages incidentally as part of the general community. Okay? Another customer enjoying your product who just happens to have an impairment. Okay? So here is an example.
So how was the big wedding?
Oh, haven't you heard? No. So it's at the end of the night, everyone's on the dance floor really getting into it, you know?
Yeah, you are.
And say, this is my left wheel, and this is the bride's foot.
Yeah.
Bush.
How awful.
Well, it wasn't all bad. I left with the best man's number.
You are terrible.
Guilty.
I'm not inviting you to my wedding. No. That's it, you're off the list.
So as you can see, that is a normal conversation that you'd be having, and it's a normal lunchtime chat amongst colleagues and friends, discussing the previous weekend's bits and pieces. They just happen to be eating Maltesers at the same time. It is a brilliant example of inclusive marketing. So this method presents little risk of criticism for disability opportunism. It has broader economic and social potential and is easily incorporated into sustained commitment marketing strategies, often as an extension of diversity initiatives within marketing. Large businesses such as Kmart, Target, and Mars Chocolate, okay, as we've just seen, have made use of this method with results shown in the next lesson. With results shown in the next lesson. No, Results won't be shown in the next lesson, sorry. Anyway, so the next one, okay, is thematic marketing. Now, in a nutshell, thematic marketing focuses on the disability or impairment itself, usually conveying an explicit message or comment about the issue, okay? It can be done well and may be helpful in showcasing products or services specific to disability or impairment. Okay, here's an example.
I can boost your profits.
I can deliver fantastic service.
I can maintain your garden.
I can maintain your fleet.
I can manage your finances.
I can be a loyal and productive employee
But I can't put my abilities to work.
if I'm not given the opportunity.
If you don't recognise my abilities,
If you don't have an open mind,
If you don't employ me,
So what can you do?
what can you do?
what can you do?
You can remember that.
Savvy employers.
No, it's what people can do that matters.
it's what people can do that grows Australian business.
The 4 million Australians with barriers and disabilities.
Have many more amazing abilities.
That should be used.
Because it's good for business.
Because it's the right thing to do.
Because every Australian deserves a fair go.
Start right now.
Call Forest Personnel on 1800 Ability.
So, as you can see, that was focusing on disability and impairment, okay? Now, many customers are reluctant to consider thematic advertising about impairment and fearing that they will get it wrong or say the wrong thing and cause offence. Okay, and this is fair enough. If you are looking at going into doing that, I really encourage you to make sure that you co-design it with people with impairment to make sure that you get the messaging right. Now, the last form of marketing, and now I'm sorry, I know that we're running a little bit over time here, but we're almost finished. So look, pride marketing is all about, most businesses have various disability related policies and procedures already in place. Things such as accepting the companion card or offering additional help for people who cannot fill out forms and much, much more. These are amazing initiatives and would sway a potential customer to actually use your business. The problem is that nobody knows about it. Okay? By showing pride in your measures, celebrating any changes and acknowledging any shortcomings, you're actually displaying and demonstrating awareness of issues. Okay? So an example of that is this article here in Everything Geraldton. Okay? The Geraldton Council is showing pride in their improvements to make sure that there is mobility, the ability for people with mobility issues to be able to actually get down to the beach. Okay? So, has an access issue come to your attention? Maybe you should use social media to actually acknowledge it and keep people up to date with the progress. Now, I will finish off with some diverse marketing pitfalls. Okay? Ads involving people with impairment should always be created in consultation with people with impairment. This will ensure that the messaging is consistent with the intent. Okay? The next one, and this is a big no-no. Use people with actual impairments and not act as pretending to have them. You may not be able to tell the difference, but the target audience can. Okay? And it will do much more harm than good. There's an example for you on the right there. Okay? And lastly, don't use them in an inspiring context. They are just normal people using your business. Okay? So those are 3 main methods of actually being able to tap into this market of people with impairment. What we're going to do now is do an open forum. I will give you guys until 12:10 to ask any questions that you have, and I will answer them before wrapping up. Now, if you don't have any questions and you do need to head off, which I understand because we are running over time, please make sure that you fill out the questionnaire. Okay? And if you have any questions as well, you'll be heading to the same spot. So www.30footdrop.com.au/live. Okay? There you'll find the chat box. Please enter any questions that you have, and you'll also find questionnaires there. Okay? Thank you very much, and catch you in about 5 minutes. Please, any questions that you have. And we're back. Alright, appears that we have not received any questions this time around. So, look, thank you very much, everybody, for your participation and for watching this particular webinar. I really hope you guys have enjoyed it. Now, our next webinar will be this evening. Now, at 6 p.m, and it'll be covering the same subject. Now, tomorrow we'll be looking at accessible tourism, which is a massive passion of mine. There is a real potential there for accessible, for tourism operators to actually tap into a market that's really, really underserved. So, if you know anybody in the tourism industry, please forward this webinar to them. But in the meantime, look after yourselves, look after each other, and I'll catch you.